There we go. Want to kick it off, Steve?
Sounds great. Thank you, Peter. Well, thanks everyone. Welcome to our webinar on confidential data exchange, made simple, efficient, secure with Microsoft 365. So I'd like to welcome and thank Peter Carson for joining us today. And we'll be going through a bit of a demo together, but the key takeaways from today will be helping you to ensure that you're keeping IT happy and you have compliance sorted and you've got peace of mind. We're streamlining the process so it's efficient for everybody involved in the document sharing, and also controlling your data and your brand, so whilst leveraging the enterprise grade security features of Microsoft 365. So yeah, we'll take you through a demo of this. Next slide, please, Peter. Today's webinar will be done in Teams. We're going to allow you to chat through the webinar in the chat. So if you've got questions, if you just post those into the chat on the, and we'll pick those up as we're going. And we'll try and break and answer those as we're working through. Please feel free to ask questions or make comments through the chat throughout the webinar. We're here for you and here to share our thoughts as well. I'd like to introduce myself. So I'm Steve Knutson. A few of you will know me on the call. Some of you might not. I'm one of the co-founders of Stratos Technology Partners based in Christchurch. I'm a Microsoft 365 consultant by profession, Microsoft MVP and regional director. And in my spare time, I've written a book, I blog, I YouTube, and I kayak. And a fun fact about me, I'm learning to speak Swedish, which is an important part of my heritage, so finding it quite difficult. My blog and LinkedIn are on this slide if you want them. We can share the slides afterwards. Stratos was founded after the Christchurch earthquake in 2011, so just about 13 years ago next week. So we're proudly Christchurch owned and operated. We have a specialist SharePoint and Power Platform team, as well as a software development side of our business. We're a Microsoft Gold partner, and in 2022, we're the Power Intranet Partner of the Year for their intranet platform. We work across a whole range of things related to Microsoft 365, specifically around SharePoint. So whether it's consulting advice, building an intranet, helping with training, developing a Power App or automation for you, or helping you get to the cloud through migration. Those are all things that Stratos can help with. And I guess a little bit about our company, our values. These values are the things that we live by. We're one team with our clients, so we like to work very closely in partnership with clients to deliver whatever solution it is that we're working on together. We listen hard by giving you a direct line to the builders, so we don't put a layer of people between you and the people doing the work. It's a direct conversation. We're there with you throughout the activities that we're working on together. And we like to do a tailored fit, so coming up with solutions that fit your business requirements rather than something that's generic. And I'll hand over to Peter to introduce himself.
Thanks, Steve. Yes, Peter Carson here, President, Founder, Chief Bottle Washer at both Envision IT and Extranet User Manager. So also a Microsoft MVP, as Steve is. Actually, we were both out in Redmond, I guess it was the week before last, wasn't it, for MVP Summit. Also local Toronto Microsoft 365 user group here in Canada. So my contact info is all there. And as Steve mentioned, we are going to be sharing the recording and the presentation after the session. A little bit about Extranet User Manager. We're established back in 2008 in the Toronto area. It's a wholly owned division of Envision IT. Envision IT is very much like a Canadian version of Stratos with the Microsoft 365 and SharePoint consulting side. And out of that business grew Extranet User Manager, which is really about making Microsoft simple in this world of external sharing, which is what we're going to be focused on here today. So that idea of connecting organizations with their external stakeholders, really focusing on the user experience and the simplicity around that. Microsoft is not a simple stack, as most people probably know, and our goal is to make that particular portion of it work better, work easier. Keep IT happy, get them involved at the beginning, but then really let the business do what they need to do and go from there. Steve, I guess we first met at Digital Workplace Conference 2023, so about a year ago, in Auckland, actually. And then this past February, we were both down in, well, you're in Christchurch, but I came to Christchurch. It was a wonderful, actually, way to spend February and a good chunk of March was down in New Zealand. It's much nicer there in February than it is in Canada. But, been talking, working together, and really sharing a common vision around Microsoft 365 and cloud-based solutions, a very common client-centric approach that we both have to our businesses. So, looking to build solutions for industry verticals. In today's session, we're going to focus in particular on legal practice management and areas around that, which Steve, maybe if you want to share a little bit about what's happened on your business side. You've actually made some investments in legal practice software, and that's an area of focus for Stratos. Here, let me
unmute myself. Yeah, just
I'll
right
let you take the agenda from here.
Yeah, so right on cue, David's joined the call. So we've Stratos has been involved in various aspects of working with law firms for many years. So firstly, doing custom SharePoint solutions. More recently, or 2.5 years ago, we did an acquisition which resulted in our team picking up the software development work for a company called OneLaw, who are legal practice management software. And then very lately, in fact, Dave just posted on LinkedIn today, we've just made an investment into OneLaw itself. So we're now a stakeholder in OneLaw as a shareholding investment from Stratos. And we have a managed services team that is also focusing on the legal industry as well. So we've got quite deep attachment to that area of our business. Yeah. So today's agenda, we're going to cover off a number of things, but the first one is around what's called a virtual data room and discussing how we share documents externally and safely. And we'll use a legal context for it because we think that's probably the most relevant for our clients, but there are other use cases as well. We're going to help you identify whether this is the right solution, so which solution for sharing is there. We're going to look at some of the unique requirements around document exchange. We'll focus on finance, insurance, and the legal sectors. We'll also demonstrate the data room, extranet user managed data room, and give some real examples and applications, and then we'll have time for a summary and Q&A at the end. So as I mentioned earlier, if you do have questions, please pop them in the chat, and we'll try and pick those up as we're going through as well.
Well, thanks, Steve. So yeah, why don't we start with just a definition of a virtual data room? It's a term that may be common for some and not so much for others. It is effectively an online repository, but security is a big part of that. Whether it's document storage or distribution, how do different organizations share documents back and forth, and often it's built right into business processes. We're going to be focusing more into the legal space here and how it can become part of that process. Finance, insurance, M&A, other examples through there, but really, any organization typically deals with people outside of their organization, and how you bring some structure to that, particularly at scale, is really what we want to focus on here. I'm sure most on the call have been familiar with the email ping pong experience back and forth, trading documents back and forth, and the fact that email is not just inefficient, it's insecure. There's a lot of cyber attacks, there's email phishing attacks to be worried about. So trying to mitigate the use of email and bring structure to that, and also mitigating dark IT risks. The fact that business often just gets frustrated with IT and gets their credit card out and just starts firing up shadow IT, and that obviously can be a challenge as well from that perspective. So that really comes to the main point here, which is why Microsoft 365. Not every enterprise in the world uses Microsoft 365, but a pretty significant portion of them do. And if you're one of those organizations that made that investment already into the Microsoft stack, it is the place where where your employees are already working. So folks are more likely to use the platforms they already understand and trust, and Microsoft comes with a really rich security set of features. Sometimes that can be a little overwhelming and confusing, but at the end of the day, like I said at the beginning, if we can make that simple and make it easy for the business to use, then you get the benefit of all those security features. And there's obviously a lot of extensive compliance certifications to that as well, whether it's from a SOC 2 or an ISO 27001, which are the information security, but public sector, government certifications and such as well. In fact, I think it was just in the last couple of weeks, wasn't it, that a new Azure data center got opened up in the New Zealand Auckland region, Steve?
Yes, so our Auckland region's live now. We don't have Microsoft 365 there yet, but it's hopefully not too far off.
Just a matter of time,
yeah.
Exactly. So we're going to talk more about the Extranet User Manager data room, and really, what it's about is providing a very bespoke, branded experience specific to your particular application, but built on top of what you've already got placed in Microsoft 365. I mean, you want to retain your brand throughout that and control over that, but you want to leverage the investment that you've made through Microsoft 365. So we think about, what are the hidden costs of insecure sharing? There's the obvious ones like data loss from a security point of view. It is a pretty big deal, but even things like the financial drain from shadow IT. I mean, how much do organizations spend on competing technologies that they don't really need because they already have that benefit from Microsoft 365? Obviously, cyber attacks are something that everybody's concerned about, but you're writing a big check to Microsoft. Are you actually leveraging that investment? Are you utilizing it from that point of view? And then just process management efficiencies. Have you built a process that works well from a back and forth point of view? And hopefully it doesn't look like this one here. And then, I've recently gone through some corporate funding and had lawyers on my side and lawyers on the bank's side, both of which I had to pay fees for. It's just part of doing business in Canada with large financial institutions. But the email ping pong back and forth wasn't just driving me nuts. It was actually driving the legal counsel nuts. One of them actually lost their cool at one point and sent a very heated email because people just couldn't figure out how to trade a document back and forth and how to get a proper electronic signature on it. I mean, one of them literally took a scan of a financial document, and I think they must have used paint to paint a copy of a physical signature onto that document. It's like, really? Do you think that's legally binding here? Is this going to work? I don't know. It's just crazy, and anything we can do to improve on that is a good thing. And also just the whole version control side of it. I mean, this is something I know I've been speaking about for a long time in the SharePoint space. I'm sure you have too, Steve, as well, which is that single version of the truth. When you put an attachment into an email and send it out to a bunch of people, and then they start working on it, you get all these different versions out there, and how do you bring it back together into one thing becomes a real challenge. If we think about this presentation that we're giving here right now, I mean, we're using a version of the data room with the partner portal that we've set up and brought your team in, Steve. And Mel was doing some changes on your side. Irina was doing changes on our side. We're all working against one version of that PowerPoint deck that's in Microsoft 365. Co-authoring is an amazing thing, and being able to use that collaborative things like this just makes so much sense from that perspective. So, I mean, it's not necessarily for everybody, but if you've got, frequent, repeated, sort of routine style external collaboration that you regularly do, if the access requirements need to be scalable, bringing in not just a handful of people, but hundreds or thousands of people, and those people come across a very diverse set of capabilities, how do you bring some structure to that? How do you make sure that you've got the compliance and control in there? We were just on a call, my team this afternoon, it's evening time here in Canada, with a large Canadian municipality, and we're helping them getting Microsoft 365 going. They're saying, hey, how do we manage this external sharing thing? And like, hey, we've got this product called Extranet User Manager. And they loved what they heard there, as they're bringing in large capital projects and infrastructure projects and lots of subcontractors, and how do they share information back and forth in a structured way? Things like compliance and sensitivity, and what style of content are you sharing, and how should that be done? What controls do you have to have in place? Do you need multi-factor authentication? Well, it depends how important the content is that you're sharing, and there's sort of a bar to raise and more complexity for people. So you got to balance that out and kind of balance that ease of use and simplicity and security. I mean, if it's strictly internal document exchange that you're talking about, or maybe there is no sensitivity or no intellectual property concerns, it's public information, you don't need to worry too much about that. It's informal, you're not concerned about data breach. But unfortunately, that doesn't apply to most organizations. Most do have a need for some sort of secure external sharing. So why don't we start actually with the partner portal itself? So here, let me, I actually didn't queue this up ahead of time, so it's going to be a live demo as we go through here. So I'm just going to flip over to the Stratos site for a second first. And like I mentioned, everything that we're building here is built on Microsoft 365. So in this case here, I'm bringing us into our Envision IT Microsoft 365, hence you see the envisionit.sharepoint.com. We're the party that's sharing out from that perspective. And things like this presentation itself is literally, the most recent document that we have in the partner portal, because this is what we're working on together right now. But we've got things like our partner agreement that we've executed back and forth, and we've collected electronic signatures through DocuSign on that. So there's that ability to make it part of the business process through there. We can see our team as well as Steve and his team here as members in the SharePoint site. Let's say we want to put a friendlier face on it. This is where the data room really comes in to say, hey, let's fire up the partner portal view of this. So this is our extranet user manager view of the partner portal that we share out with our external partners. So I need to sign in as a user on it, regardless of whether I'm on the inside or on the outside side. I can use my Envision IT credentials to sign in. And under the hood, even though this is hosted in our external user manager product, you may have seen it flip there very quickly. It went to login.microsoftonline.com. We're using Microsoft, we're using all that stack to leverage it through here. So here we've got a nice friendly view of our external user manager partner portal. We've got a link right to the PowerPoint that we're working with from that perspective. We also share up things like partner dashboards. We can look at deals that we've going on between the two organizations, sales and marketing resources, any sort of partner support into our ticketing software and such from there. We can see Steve and members of his team, Logan on our side, myself, so we can see all the various different folks through there. Through that interface. So it's just a nice, easy way to work back and forth and manage things from that perspective. This is actually the second of 3 webinars that we're doing. We did one last week with a partner in the UK called Essential Computing, and we did a deep focus into the financial side. I'm not going to go too deep into this right now, but let me just bring up a quick look at it, and then we'll switch on to the legal one from there. So if I'm over here in our demo portal, and it's actually a live portal, you can copy that URL from my screen and start browsing around in there if you desire. So again, I'm going to log into that portal with my credentials, and I'm going to come into this Contoso financial loan application. This is the one that we went in through the Essential side of the house. So I'm not going to dive all the way in on this one, but I just wanted to give you a sense around it. The idea here is if you're doing a loan application, whether it's a business to consumer or business to business type of scenario, there's typically a lot of paperwork that goes back and forth through this. I mentioned having to go through this experience just recently. We're doing some funding on the Envision IT extranet user manager side. It was an onerous, long process. It took a really long time to get the Canadian financial institutions through their document collection and such, on the order of about 10 months or so. So a little bit surprising from that point of view. I wish we could have used something like this. I proposed it, but the big banks are maybe a little further out of my reach in terms of prospective clients, at least just yet on this side. It's probably more a tier 2 financial institution would make sense here. But the concept was if I was coming in here and starting a loan application, I could put my own information in here, my applicant name, Peter Carson, my company name, Envision IT, what sort of loan I'm looking for. I mean, typically we'd have more fields on here, but we had sort of this as a beginning set We can even do things like have Google Places to make it easy to actually find our address and populate it on the form from there. And when I hit apply there, it's actually going to create a data room that allows me to then upload all the various different business documents that are needed around that process. But as I mentioned, we're going to go deeper into the legal case side of things. So let's switch back here and talk a bit about legal matters. Had to actually do a little Googling and learning myself on the legal space, because that's not an area that I know super well. We have a number of clients in the legal space, and I always think of lawyers dealing with cases. Well, they only call them cases if they're actually going to be in front of a judge from a court case point of view. And not everything a lawyer does involves standing up in front of a judge. And legal matters is sort of the broader term around that. If I'm buying a house, if I'm doing some estate planning, if I'm doing a contract negotiation between two companies, I mean, those are all legal matters that you might get your legal counsel involved with from that point of view. And typically, again, there's a lot of documents going back and forth through those scenarios. So for now, we haven't integrated this into any sort of legal practice software. I mean, that's something Steve and I are talking about from a broader partnering point of view. But the concept is that, as legal counsel, I've got a matter that I'm working on, and I know that I need to either provide documents or collect documents or go both ways back and forth between a number of parties. How do I do that? And building out a data room is sort of a key way of doing that. I mean, it's super important from a liability point of view, making sure that you've got all the critical documents, that you've got all the signatures in there. If you miss something, you're opening up both yourself and your client to legal liability. So that's a big deal. Tracking is super important, making sure that you're seeing the current version, that you've got the track changes in there, that you're able to compare versions and such through there. And obviously oversight in there can be a big thing from a litigation or sanction perspective. So let's come back over onto our demo tenant here. And I'm actually going to go through that process of creating a legal matter data room. So, I mean, the matter number would typically come from the legal practice software. I'm just going to use today's date as an example for a matter number in there. And then we decide what type of matter this is. We just put sort of a sample of a couple different cases in here. Let's use a real estate as our example. Now, partner wouldn't actually be Stratos as our partner. Partner would be who's the partner in the law firm that's in charge of this particular matter. And I'm going to play the role of legal counsel. Don't actually take me up on that, because I'm not a lawyer by trade and such. But I'll just put some details in through here. And I'm going to go create that. Now, this process takes a couple minutes to go through, because what it's doing is it's creating a folder in Microsoft 365, and it's setting up a bunch of permissions. So it makes it easy for me to then invite Steve into the data room and work there. So while I'm waiting for that email to come through, let me come over here and just kind of explain under the hood a bit of what's going to be happening in the tenant. So this EUM portal is our product portal. That's the data room that I was just showing you there, where I was actually putting in the matter number and such through there. We host that on our client's behalf. So we are a software as a service type of company. We actually run that in Microsoft Azure ourselves. So we don't run our own data centers. We do it all as part of the Microsoft side. Currently, we have data centers in the Microsoft US, Canada, and Western Europe data centers to accommodate data sovereignty for clients in those geographies. I mean, we could certainly spin it up in either the brand new New Zealand data center or the existing Australia data centers down under as well from that point of view. The key is it tends to map your own Microsoft 365 tenants. You're roughly in the same data zone from that perspective. But when I go through that process on the EUM portal, what it's doing is connecting to an existing team site that we've set up there. And it's just creating a folder for, in this case, for the matter that's going to be managed through there. It's also populating an Excel that I'm going to show you in a minute to kind of define the process and the things that we want to do in that data room. So the key is just use very simple out of the box tools, Excel and SharePoint and folders, and keep it simple from that point of view. Under the hood, we've got our external user manager product, which is also managed and hosted in our Azure subscription, but even it itself is leveraging your Enter ID. So all of your security, all of your user database in your tenant, we don't host that for you. That's on your side. And all the configuration for the product itself actually sits in your SharePoint as well. We use your Exchange Online for any sort of emails, like the one that's going to be coming to me saying, hey, your data room is ready, is actually coming through your Exchange Online. So it's got your email domain on it. It's got your alias. It's your branding through all of that as part of that. So let's have a quick peek over here. I'm just going to open up my Outlook and see if that's come through yet. Just waiting for that. I am in the right one, or am I not? Actually, no, I'm in my Envision IT. Bear with me 1 second here. I want to be over in EUM demo. Wearing too many different hats here. There we go. 24 minutes past, so just a minute ago that came through. Okay, so this is letting me know, hey, your legal matter data room is up and ready, and you can go ahead and launch over into that portal. So I can either use the link from the email, or if I'm back in the portal itself, I can actually come to the members page here. You can actually use this portal sort of as a one-stop shop to get you back into any of the data rooms, any of the groups that you belong to through there. So if we come down through here, there's my 2024-03-25 that I just created. So that's the brand spanking new empty data room for us to work through here. And right now I'm the only member in there. We haven't invited anybody in. We don't have any documents in there as part of that. So let's imagine that Steve is our client as a legal firm, and this particular real estate transaction, we're going to be working with him on this, and we need him to be providing a bunch of documents as part of that. So let's actually come up here, and I don't think we have you set up, Steve, because I think I cleared you out. Yes, so let me just add a brand new user here. And sorry, I should have your email handy. I'm just going to pull it up on the other screen here. There we go. Okay, so if I paste in your email address, got to do a little bit of formatting here because I pasted it from Outlook and it sort of put everything across. Let's grab that, make you active, put your name in, and we want to make you a member of a group. So let's actually use that legal data room 2024-03-25 there. So what I'm doing here is I'm inviting Steve in, and I'm basically creating a guest account in my tenant and associated him with that data room. Now I could have just created a folder and invited him in, but I may not have made the right choices around where I set up the permissions and what role I gave him. This kind of streamlines and automates that process and makes it a little safer from that perspective. So Steve, I actually just realized I'm not sure if I set up the email invitation that's supposed to come through there. So I'm just going to chat this across to you so you've got it. I was supposed to turn on the welcome email in the group, and I realized I didn't do that. So if you want to share your screen, and then just click on that link that I've chatted across. Now, for folks on the call thinking, oh, I've got the chat link there too. The invitation is tied to Steve, so he's the only one that can accept it from that point of view.
Okay. So here we are. So I've received the invitation from Peter, and I'm going to sign in here. It's the first time I've signed in to the starter room, so I've just popped my email address in. And
actually, Steve, before you do that, or I think the login is going now already, isn't it? Let's get it through there, and we'll catch it on the next step.
Yeah. So the first time that I connect in here, I've got to because I'm sharing information from my Microsoft 365 tenant to the tenant that is sharing to me. I need to allow it to or grant a permission to do a few things. So I collect my profile information and so on here. And so I'm just going to accept that. that's a one-time activity that you need to do at the beginning. And then once we've done that, it's going to log me through. So you'll see it's just going through a login process at the top here.
So when it comes back up with the demo portal, just pause there for a second. Yep. So this is taking us into the legal matter, but you'll notice it's got extranet user manager branding on it. And we were using the Contoso scenario. We actually flipped the branding on our demo tenants, and I forgot to send you the link that does that flip. If you take everything from the members onwards off on your address bar and type in the word branding, and just remove the word members as well.
Sorry.
Yep. I mean, this is a good example, actually, of how you can flip the branding around very quickly on the sites. It should be fairly quickly.
Yeah.
There we go. So go ahead and click on the Contoso link there. That basically switches the whole portal into a Contoso brand. There we go. So obviously, you know, Contoso is a made-up Microsoft company. It's not a real company. We use it for demo purposes. But Steve, if you just click the link from the chat again, we'll get back into the legal matter data room. And then just refresh this page. There we go. Now we've got our nice Contoso legal branding on there. So you'll see Steve gets the legal matter number that I typed in, the matter type, the description, the partner name, all is sort of metadata about the data room as to how it was created through here. Now, you know, I may not know as legal counsel exactly what I need from Steve. This can be just sort of an open spot for you to share some documents. So why don't you go ahead and click the upload link there.
I can either drag and drop, or I can, so I've got some files here already that I prepared earlier. So I might start with should I do this in 2 stages, Peter? I'll start with
you can actually bring the whole batch across if you want.
We'll drag those across, drop them onto here, and then you'll see that these documents are not an actual property, but they relate to a property transaction. So we've got it's uploaded here. It's giving me just a pop-up card, and now I can see the documents that I've uploaded and when they've been uploaded. I've uploaded a mix of Word and PDF files in this scenario, but you can load any Office doc or any common document format to be supported.
Actually, Steve, if you want to try clicking into one of those, like maybe the mortgage application document, the Word document. So even though Steve's in a custom branded portal here under the hood, when he's clicking those links, he's actually launching into the full Microsoft 365. So you can see in the address bar, he's now in our eumdemo.sharepoint.com. So he's come into our tenant, and Word Online has opened up in his browser for him there. And depending on the rights I granted when I created the data room, sometimes you would create just a read-only data room. Other times you might want to allow the collaboration and allow editing live in the documents like this. So we can see that Steve's signed in the top right there. I mean, I could open this document and you would see me in there as well from that perspective. So it really opens up a lot of opportunity from not just a collection point of view, but a collaboration perspective. So Steve, let me grab the screen back again, and I'm going to take us through a bit more of the under the hood of what's going on here. So if I refresh this, so I can see the documents that Steve has uploaded through there. You know, maybe I just want to get the package of all the documents that Steve's provided me. I can actually use this download all documents link here, and it'll create a zip archive of those 5 documents that Steve's uploaded and pull them down to my local system. So if I need them outside of Microsoft 365, it's easy to do. The whole goal here really, though, is to stay in Microsoft 365 and not have to do this kind of thing, is to manage them all together in that one spot. But let's say there was a few more things that I needed from Steve, and you know, I wanted to make it simple and straightforward for him to do that. So we've got the mortgage application, the purchase agreement, the building inspection, you know, what I can do is actually open an Excel configuration. And this is something I get to do because I'm the person that created the data room. It's not something that Steve would have direct access to. He'd see the results of it. So I can see actually the legal matter information that got entered when I first created it, and I can update those folder properties, and we'll see those back on the main page. But I can also fill in requested documents. Maybe I want the actual deed. Maybe I want the land survey as additional things in this transaction. I can just add them into the Excel here. If I close out of Excel, just come back and refresh my data room. And Steve, we don't see your screen anymore, but you would see the same thing on your side. It takes a second here because what it's doing is it's processing that Excel that I've updated and saying, hey, let's reinterpret that and reset up the data room based on what's been done in there. So that I'll come back and we'll actually see a section that has the requested documents that I put in there for Steve. So in addition to the documents he's already uploaded through there, we can see, hey, there's a deed, there's a land survey that's required. And let's say I was Steve and uploading those files. If I just grab a couple of documents off my local system, I'll keep it simple and just do PDF 1 and 2. Go ahead and open those. Now, remember when Steve uploaded, he was just uploading documents. Now I've asked for specific documents. So it actually asked me, well, which one of those is the deed and which is the land survey? And I can go and upload that. So in addition to upload the documents, it's actually tagging them and matching them from that point of view. So as the browser refreshes, the list of requested documents is now empty again because I've uploaded both the deed and the land survey. There's nothing more required from that point of view. But you can see when you think about that email ping pong back and forth and keeping track of who needs to do what, being able to manage all that through that Excel process becomes very easy from that perspective. And then if we dig right down under the hood, when I open up the SharePoint that's driving this, this is the actual folder. So when I did that initial form, I said, hey, I want to create legal matter 2024-0325. It created this folder for me as part of that process. And then as Steve was uploading documents and then I was uploading documents, they're all happening against this folder in SharePoint. The end business user or the external user doesn't really know or care about that. But the idea is that you've got all the security and all the information protection of Microsoft 365 that you can wield here as part of that and through that. And likewise, if I look at the actual folder itself, without getting too far into the weeds, there is access that's being set up. It's saying there, hey, that item is being shared with guests. We can actually see the details around here and how this is configured. So all this happened automatically under the hood. When I said, hey, I wanted a data room set up, it created this group for me. And I don't see it here. Oh, no, I do. So we can see that I've actually added Steve to the group through there. But it makes it very fail-safe. The ability to come in here and say, hey, I've just added a new user and put them in the group, and everything else just magically happens, becomes an amazing thing from that perspective. But it can go further than that. Sorry, go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I think in my experience, it's one of the biggest problems that people have with external sharing is knowing what am I sharing. And I think when you say about making this safe for people to share, this is actually something that happens in practice a lot, is that people either think are either overconfident in their sharing and they get it right, or they get it wrong, and they aren't aware of it until sometime later. So one thing we see often is people sharing a link, that link expires, so they send back a request to access the site at a higher level, and inadvertently get permissioned at a higher level in the structure than we would like.
Yeah, that idea of oversharing unfortunately happens a lot. And like you say, people don't realize it until after the fact. It becomes a real challenge from that point of view. So if we can minimize the choices they make and really streamline it to the business process, then it helps a lot to eliminate that risk. And even things like guardrails around, who should be able to be invited to the group. We can actually put rules up here to say, hey, we've got a whitelist or a blacklist, for example, from an email domain point of view. So you're only allowed to invite people from a particular domain, or you're not allowed. I don't want to see any Gmail addresses in here, or I just want to see this particular organization in here. You've got a fair bit of control around how you set that up and how you do that sharing. Okay, so let's come back to our deck here for a minute. So the insurance one, we're not going to go too deep into this one, but I do want to talk about an important point. This actually came back up with our municipal client that we were just talking with today, which is around sensitivity and multi-factor authentication. You know, if today in 2024, if a client said to me, we have some users in our organization that we don't enforce MFA on, I'd be like, hang on, before we go any further, we need to fix that. Like every single user who works for your organization should go through MFA as part of coming into your Microsoft 365. It's the single best way to improve the security of your environment. You know, just depending on a password that somebody may reuse on a bunch of different sites and can get brute forced or guessed or social engineered is a bad idea. But saying, hey, in addition to that, you know, you have to use your authenticator app on your phone and type in a 2-digit number and have that second factor of authentication, just like quite a few orders of magnitude increase in security from there. Where this becomes a challenge is when you get into guests and say, hey, well, now I'm bringing external people in, and you know, how do I manage that? Do I require them to set up their multi-factor authentication? That can be a big barrier, and you can actually block people from coming in. In that municipal scenario, they had you know, certain cases where the guests were, you know, it was the city of, and it was the police department of, that was an external tenant that needed to come in and share. And there was HR information, and there was protected B assets, and all this high security information. Absolutely, all those police folks that are coming in as guests should go through a second factor of authentication. At the same time, the mayor wanted to have a steering group where he was bringing in, you know, prominent members of the community to work as part of a committee and share ideas back and forth. And those are members of the public, saying to them, hey, you've got to get this authenticator app set up for this, and security and everything else can just scare people away, and you're just not going to be able to run your group as part of that. So you have to decide how sensitive is the content, and how do we manage it from that point of view. Yeah, and we've set up this particular group here as an example. Again, I won't go through it right now, but it uses what's called a sensitivity label. It's part of Microsoft 365. It's part of their Purview security and compliance package, and it allows you to assign a label to content to say, hey, is this confidential? Is it private eyes only? Is it general public information? You know, what is its sensitivity? And then you can put rules around that. So if you've labeled something as sensitive in this example, it's going to force somebody to go through that second factor of authentication from that point of view. So you can really balance the security and the user experience and the sensitivity of the content all together from that point of view, and really structure it well from that perspective. You know, and the insurance example is one that we often use for this. You know, often we work with a number of different insurance companies, particularly in the disability or the health space. You know, there's a lot of personal health information going back and forth. That is typically a fairly high sensitivity, and you want to make sure that the folks on the receiving end are treating it appropriately from that point of view. And it's not just multi-factor authentication. You can encrypt that content. You can decide, you know, who gets to do what with it. Is it eyes only, that they can only view it? They can't print it. They can't copy and paste it. You know, Microsoft gives you a lot of ability to lock that down and prevent things like data leakage, and make sure that it's working well from that point of view. So just, you know, kind of coming full circle here back to the key takeaways that Steve started us off with. You know, this idea of the business just needs to get business done. How do we keep them happy and satisfied? Is don't put too much up in their way. Make it simple and easy for them, but make sure that IT and compliance can still sleep at night, that they've got the appropriate controls in place, and they're comfortable with what the business is doing. You know, and as much as possible, if you can streamline that process, you know, get away from things like that email ping pong, and just make it easy, like Steve and I just did, of trading some documents back and forth, getting that legal matter data room set up. Just improves the productivity, not just on your organization side, but on the external party side as well. And through that whole experience, like Steve, you did that flip into the Contoso brand for us. You know, imagine that it's your own organization, it's your brand in there. It's your URL in the site, you know, it's all of that, but it's all living on top of that Microsoft stack. So you've got that enterprise grade security in your Microsoft 365 tenant, pulled together as part of that. I haven't been keeping an eye on chat. Have we had questions come in, Steve?
So no questions, Peter. Now would be a good
Either
time
we're
to
doing
ask.
awesome or we're losing people. I never know in these situations. We'll see where it goes. We do have the recording, so if we lost you in there, you can always wind it back afterwards and have another pass through there. We do have some additional resources. So as I mentioned, we're going to be putting up both the slide deck and the recording, and there'll be a follow-up email with the details for that. We've got some articles around, specific to the legal space, more broadly around the data room, and more broadly again just around secure external sharing, things to think about both from a structured and unstructured point of view. So I know we've focused in on some very specific scenarios, most particularly the legal space, but hopefully you can extrapolate from that and say, hey, in my business, this is what we do, but it's got the same sort of challenges and things going on from that perspective. Arena, I know you had a quick questionnaire here. Did you want to send the link out to folks, or should I do that here right now?
You can just copy and paste that into the chat now if you'd like.
Just trying to figure out if I actually can copy. Hang on, I think I've got to get out. So just a couple quick questions in terms of how you came to be at the webinar here today. Be much appreciated. Just take a second to fill that out. Let me bring the presentation back up for us here. From a follow-up point of view, Steve and his team at Stratos obviously interested in having conversations. Logan, from our side, if you want to know more about the Extranet User Manager product, feel free to reach through Steve and his team on that side. But we're there to back you up from that perspective. And I guess we're done a little bit early. We didn't have a ton of questions, so that kept it moving from that perspective. Steve, any sort of last wrap-up thoughts or comments that you want to bring out to the group?
Yeah, I think the first one is like the most most data breach and privacy breach issues are actually accidental. So over 80% are accidental issues caused by people not understanding how the technology works or how it functions. And we've had some pretty high-profile examples in New Zealand, for example, collecting passports on a public website because it was the easiest place to get people to upload their passport images to in an unprotected WordPress environment. So, people using the right tool for the job is really important when it comes to information security and also information management. So the great thing about the Extranet User Manager, and one of the reasons why Peter and I keep talking to each other, is that everything is inside Microsoft 365. So you get the benefit of the all of the security and compliance capabilities that you have, the audit logging, and the content is in your control. So it's in your tenant, in your control. But we're simplifying the experience for the user that's uploading it, and particularly when they're infrequent. And if I just think about the property purchasing activity as an example, I don't know if anybody's bought a house recently, but my last experience in buying a house involved doing what they call a do it online with the city council. And the first thing the do it online told me to do was download a PDF file, print it out, and then return the signed version. So that's not digital transformation. That's that's a digital download. So if you've got processes like that, these Extranet User Manager is a great way to build a portal very quickly to allow people to upload those repeated sets of documents that you would require through different business processes. And one of the great things is you can do templates for different types. So if you've got one set of uploads for a property transaction, another set for perhaps an AML process, for example, then that they can be set up as templates, and you're capturing all your information into your 365 environment.
Yeah, and we didn't show the e-signature side of it. I mean, this is an area I'm very interested in. I mean, Microsoft is bringing out sort of their own answer to DocuSign and Adobe Acrobat electronic signatures. So far, just rolling out in preview in US tenants. So we haven't even seen it here in Canada. I'm assuming the same in New Zealand, but it'd be interesting to see how it comes together to say, hey, within that data room, you could have not just documents that are available for review or upload, but action on them itself to say, hey, here's a contract and it's requiring a signature. Just click in and do the electronic signature right as part of the data room portal itself is sort of our future vision of where we see that going.
Yeah, and because these documents are sitting inside SharePoint, when something gets uploaded, you can trigger a workflow. So that can be the beginning of your electronic process internally as well.
Exactly. Very good. Cool. Well, Steve, I want to thank you for both the partnership and taking the time here to do the webinar here together. It's fun to do that. And if there are other follow-on questions from folks, don't be afraid. Our email contacts are there. Go ahead and reach out, and happy to continue the conversation.
Yeah. Thank you, Peter, for sitting up late tonight and taking the time to speak to us on a New Zealand time zone friendly webinar.
No worries. I'm a night owl, so it's not too bad. Thanks, and have a great day, everyone.